Hello, my name is Chris Bennett, and this is a presentation about these books here to the Reiner family. I've been following what happened over the last 4 or 5 days, and I'm very sorry about what you're going through. I've been very upset about it, and I'm doing this video to communicate everything I know, which is relevant to the situation of why it happened. And based on my discussions with the Reiner family, one member, Tracy Reiner, who I started talking to and I was introduced to and trying to work with. We were over at least 10 or 20 conversations. We talked about creating a series of documentaries to release the information about the cure for post-traumatic stress and depression, anxiety, obesity, high blood pressure, suicide, violence, war, etc. So based on a big library I have, I'm going to go through some of the books here about health, which I've started putting together when I started working with my father in 2000. So my father was a professor of medicine at UCLA for 35 years. Here's the book he wrote. And the title is, In 12 Weeks, You Can Control Your High Blood Pressure Without Drugs. And high blood pressure, hypertension, is a symptom of toxic stress overload. So stress, what I learned after I started working with my father, and I did a bunch of research, reading the research at UCLA at the medical library, and reading his book, finally. I didn't get to it until around 2000. Unfortunately, I had no idea of the value in there. So, but let me stop for a second and explain why this is so urgent now, and let me hit a few critical bullet points. So in 2016 I got introduced to Tracy, and okay, 2008 I met a friend of Rob Reiner, a good friend and collaborator. So that's what this book is. What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. So it's all about post-traumatic stress and healing post-traumatic stress. And it says exactly what I just said, which is toxic stress overload is causing high blood pressure, obesity, addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions. See where I'm going? So what I've been working on for over 20 years is releasing the information on the cure out to the public so that these things won't happen and the cure can get into the medical system. It's called, and into the psychological system. So what went wrong here, okay, and also in this video or the next one, okay, I'm going to try to explain to you how everybody in your family, as bad as what you've gone through now, can get better quickly, can feel better, okay? That's what this is about, is, okay, I'm just going to have to do it. All right, so we were trying to pull together a documentary in 2016, and Tracy was going to get her mom involved, Penny, okay, because she said, my mom's overweight and she was diagnosed with cancer and she can't quit smoking. And so, okay, let me back up. So Rob Reiner was a spokesperson for the Pritikin Longevity Center for maybe 30 years. He did it maybe in the 1980s. My father was the founding medical director for the Pritikin Longevity Center. I'm going to get to that. So, Carl Reiner lived into his 90s thanks to my dad. If my dad at UCLA had not contacted Nathan Pritikin, brought in the money to buy a hotel in Santa Monica on the beach, staffed it with UCLA doctors and nurses, wouldn't have gotten on 60 Minutes. My dad had Lauren Green as his patient, Shirley MacLaine's parents, and Warren Beatty's parents, their sister and brother. Let's see. So I was been trying to pull the post-traumatic stress experts. They know the cure for addictions. And so I've been trying to pull them together for over 20 years, and I'm going to tell the story here. And my most biggest home run was Tracy Reiner. Was 100% on board because, okay, it was a family thing that she shared with me. There was some family issues, which I said, my family has the issues. Every family I know has the issues, so I'm not going to share anything confidential that she told me, friend to friend. Okay, but she had personal, highly motivated reasons. And so maybe we can talk to her about that. But, so she was going to talk to Carrie Fisher, her really good friend, like for her whole life or something. Carrie Fisher was misdiagnosed having bipolar disorder. So bottom line is this. So this is really terrible what your brother has done. Okay. It's just beyond, what you can comprehend, I'm sure. So, but here's what I have to say is it's the drugs. So he was put on psych drugs and he was taking illegal drugs and he was unable to go into facility. Okay, so that has got to change. Okay, so that's what this video is also about. It's I want to share with you the secrets of healing. And my goal is to bring together a bunch of the top experts on the issue of post-traumatic stress for you to learn about healing, and we're going to share with the whole world, which is exactly what I've been trying to do. Okay? And Bruce Perry already agreed to participate, but I don't know, somehow my communications with him I've been getting the runaround, and he's, through his assistant, I don't know what's going on exactly. But I've been having very difficult time communicating with him. So, he must have been advising your family and Rob. Okay, I'm going to explain the whole background. Okay, he knew him for a long time. And he must have been advising your brother's care. Didn't he tell him schizophrenia is a baloney diagnosis? Didn't he tell him that the drugs don't work? Okay, so over a year ago, I tried to get Dr. Bruce Perry together with his friend Shad Me Shad who's a friend of Jane Fonda, to reveal the cure to the whole world. So Shad Me Shad said yes. I recorded the phone call. And then after that, his chief of staff or something, started giving me the runaround and slammed the door and hung up on me. So I'm going to go through the whole story right now. So, Dr. Bruce Perry doesn't seem to know the cure. Okay, so your brother didn't get... Okay, the situation could have gone in an entirely different direction. And we're going to go through the 10 different things. And this wouldn't happen at all. And then there wouldn't be this big cloud over your brother and your family, and that now you gotta... It's going to follow you for a few years until, but as you understand what actually went wrong, it's going to help clear it up. It's going to help you, make you feel better. I guarantee you. I don't want to sound like stupid when I say that. Okay. But, let's hope for the best, all right? So, let's see. Bruce Perry doesn't know the cure because Dr. Figley knows the cure. So, Dr. Figley created the concept of post-traumatic stress back in the 1980s after he came back from the Vietnam with Jane Fonda. And so Jane Fonda was at the party. So Jane Fonda has no idea that she knows the cure, and she should have been talking about it with everybody there. So I was trying to get her together over a year ago. Like I said, I talked to her friend Shad Me Shad. So I know I'm jumping around a lot, but if your mind is spinning, okay, mine is too. Okay, you have no idea. So here's this book right here. All right, Burnout in Families. So he created the concept of post-traumatic stress along with Shad Me Shad. Shad Me Shad has the National Veterans Foundation at the LA airport. They were in Vietnam together. They were both in a MASH unit. And then they came back, and then they worked with Senator John Kerry, Jane Fonda, Bessel van der Kolk. I've got his books here. Let's see. And they advocated for the veterans, and then they forced the psychiatric industry to accept post-traumatic stress into the DSM Diagnostic Statistic Manual, which is the Bible for all psychiatry. So bottom line is this: schizophrenia is a fraud. Your brother got the wrong diagnosis and drugs that don't work in bad combinations that have not been proven to help anybody. And there's been many incidences like this. Okay. And I've been trying to stop it for 20 years. So I'm going to go through that. So, my dad's book started getting at the problem. I got a timeline here. Let's see, where's my timeline? So, two critical supporting. So I have over 100 pages of research that I found at UCLA, at the medical library, and subsequently in the years, which I read and copied and highlighted and everything. So Dr. Peter Breggin, back in the 1990s, published this book, which is all about how a bunch of the labels in mental health are just completely bogus and made up. And the real cause of these problems is stress and, broken families, dysfunctional families. Things happen. So, let me just say this. I'm a big fan of your dad. So, I've been trying to work with him for 20 years. Over 20 years. 20 years. So, 20 years ago, I put together this poster. He's right up here. So, that's a picture from an award he got. Oh, darn it. I'm going to take a little break right here since I'm having a technical difficulties problem. So, let me see. If I can straighten that up. Okay, I'm on a low budget thing here. All right. So, okay, I'm going to try to keep going. All right. So, it's a low budget thing. All right. It's a low budget thing right now, unfortunately. So, I'm going to explain to you why when you hear the whole story. It's going to blow your freaking mind. Okay, I better get to one thing first, all right? So, it was all going. It was taking off. It was going to take off. Okay, I talked to Tracy Reiner. She wanted to do it. She was jumping on it. She got on a phone with Senator Kent Conrad's former chief of staff, who knew Norman Lear, because Norman Lear held a bunch of events with celebrities for Senator Kent Conrad, with Bob Van Huvelen was his name. Okay, his former chief of staff. Okay, so we got on the phone with him. I'm going to tell you that. It's going to blow your mind. Okay, so when you're going to connect all the dots. Okay, so I showed Tracy a chart, which I put together 20 years ago. It shows that the symptoms for ADHD and bipolar disorder are identical to the symptoms for post-traumatic stress and depression. So I figured it out because it was right in my dad's book. On one of the pages, there's a list of symptoms of stress from, this was 1984, from Hans Selye, the most important stress expert of all time. 1950s, he wrote a book called about stress, The Stress of Life, and it had a list of symptoms of stress. And so it includes difficulty concentrating and difficulty with memory and hyperactivity. So millions of kids who maybe just have a slightly dysfunctional relationship with their dad, and it's been like snowballing for years because there's no mental health care in the schools. Okay, so the cure, according to Dr. Figley, is family therapy. So it looks like your brother might have been diagnosed as having ADHD or something, like when he's younger, and then maybe started on the drugs. So I saw, like recently, it said he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Okay, so what goes wrong is that the kids, they're having some kind of problem. They're getting bullied at school. They may have some stress in their family. And then they go into the doctor or something, and the doctor or the psychologist or the psychiatrist says, you have ADHD, and so take these drugs. So Tracy told me she was going to talk to Carrie Fisher, and I said, Carrie Fisher she's been misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder when she actually has PTSD, and it's like obvious. Let's see, problems in her family. Her dad had the affair, the divorce. Then they adopted Tina Marie, whose two parents died of a drug overdose. Carrie wrote in her book right here that when they adopted Tina Marie and they brought her home, then she was having some problems. And, it was like very difficult to have a traumatized child there. Okay. Now, according to Tina Marie, who a friend of mine met 6 or so years ago. So a friend of mine met her and then spent a few days with her, and Tina Marie was suicidal. And so she called me on the phone and said she's suicidal, and I said, well, just hang out with her and listen to her and talk to her. And she wanted to do a tell-all book about how terrible her childhood was. She's never done that. So from that, I thought, well, there was something going on in that family, difficulties. So the cure, according to Dr. Figley, is family therapy. So I was going to get the Carrie Fisher family involved with Dr. Figley and the experts at UCLA on this subject. I got their books right here. And help them heal. And then we're going to do a documentary about it so we can educate the medical system and the whole world. Now, some people think when you start saying we're going to share information with 8 billion people, okay, people start like their head doesn't work or something. Okay, but Taylor Swift has 10 music videos with over 2 billion views. It happens. So what I have in mind is 10 celebrity men, 10 celebrity women who want to heal, going through a healing program. I'm thinking the Palazzo d'Amore. So I've been trying to line that up, if you know what that is. So Jeff Green, a billionaire who lives in Florida, he owns it. It's empty. I've already talked to him twice about it. Okay, so I'll get more to that. So anyway, and then so that's what I've been trying to line up with Tracy Reiner and Rob Reiner. Well, Rob Reiner was like in the chain of who I was getting to this one and then to that one. And I talked to Tracy about Rob about 1.5 years ago again. Okay. So, and then I learned about that documentary about addictions that they did, and I was really interested in that. So, you know what? Let me just say something about the people that were there at the party that are now traumatized. Okay, how I got into this field is in the 1990s, I read in the LA Times about the trauma intervention program. So when it was started down in San Diego by Wayne Fortin, and they have a group of volunteers, and when somebody dies suddenly, then the police or fire department can call a hotline and they'll dispatch a volunteer within 30 minutes or so to spend time with the survivors or witnesses or whoever or family members. So exactly like in this situation. I don't know if they have it in Beverly Hills now. Okay, so I read about it in the LA Times, and then I had a friend working for Councilman Alatorre, Los Angeles, and so Bonnie Canner, and so she was involved with the police and fire department, and so she brought it up to them. We really need this, and then they brought it to LA, and then they set up the program, and then I went through the program. Then they changed the name to the Crisis Response Team, and the city took over, but now it's still there. So the mayor's Crisis Response Team. So I went through the program. So they have like a whole 20 volunteers go through a seminar for a weekend, and you learn about what do you do if somebody dies, and then you go out there at 2:00 in the morning and you spend time with them, and then what do you do? It was very bare bones training. I was very unprepared. So I ended up once they got it all set up, and then I went through the program, and then I went out on probably 3 calls where somebody had died, and there was a body. Okay, so one call, there was a man who had died, and he was covered over with a blanket on the floor. He'd had a heart attack or something, and there was a lady there who was crying, and the police were there, and then I stayed there for about a half an hour, and I was alone. Okay. And then like half an hour later, and I stayed there for an hour, and then the son arrived to identify the body, and then so he pulled the blanket off, and then there was the guy, kind of blue, and so that was one situation. Another situation, somebody died from AIDS, I think. Let's see, I can't remember the third situation. So soon after, within a few months, I developed a severe anxiety, and I didn't know what it was. And so I was going to work, and when I arrived at work 10 minutes late, I was really worried I was going to get fired. Like, really worried. And I started to realize soon after something was wrong. Okay, so I stopped working. I had been working down at that refinery down in Torrance on Crenshaw. Okay, so for locals. Anyway, so then I started, at the same time I was found my dad's book, and we decided to update it, and so I was going to UCLA's medical library, and I started reading all about post-traumatic stress, and I ended up discovering Dr. Figley is the top expert in the world on post-traumatic stress, in the sense that he's so is Bessel van der Kolk, and especially, and the other ones, Shad Me Shad. Okay, but Dr. Figley has published more peer-reviewed articles and published more books, and he was the founding director of the International Society of Traumatic Stress Studies and a bunch of organizations and journals. And so I flew out and met him right after 9/11, and he signed his book, which is right here. So if you read his books, you can find the cure. So he knows how to cure the problem. But for some reason, Dr. Perry ignores what Dr. Figley is saying. So Dr. Perry has been friends with Rob Reiner since the 1990s. Really good friends. They worked on, in the 1990s, I first learned about Dr. Perry because he was at the Governors Association doing a speech, and Rob Reiner was there, I think. And so I saw it on cable, and it was all about the cure for what happened to him now. And so I'm just really tripping, and like extremely. So it's available on C-SPAN. So what he said and what they said is all about juvenile delinquents who go and get into gangs and get violent and get addicted and everything. Okay, so I haven't seen the video for a long time. The cure is probably in there, except that for some reason Dr. Perry has been ignoring Dr. Figley's treatment for 40 years, and they've never been on video together. So when I talked to Shad Me Shad over a year ago, Jane Fonda's friend, so I first met him in person around 2008 when I went out to his office at the LA airport. On the board of directors is Oliver Stone and Martin Sheen. Okay, so I have a connection to both of them too. So I went out there in 2008 or 2010 or so, sat down with him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I know Jane Fonda really well," and I didn't know the whole story then. Okay, now I learned, I already told you. So anyway, I followed up again over a year ago, and I said, Shad, you've never gone on camera with your colleagues, Bruce Perry and Charles Figley, and talked about 3 things. What is the cure for post-traumatic stress? Because 22 veterans kill themselves every day. The drugs, and especially in a bunch of bad combinations, don't work. And they're causing people to die and do bad things, like commit violence. Number 3, the labels are bogus. Like ADHD and schizophrenia. Did I mention the cure? And what's the real cure? Okay. Shit. I'm having memory problems from stress. So we'll get to that. Let me see. So I talked to him over a year ago, and I recorded the call. You can listen to it. And I said, so he said, "Oh yeah, I know Dr. Perry." I think he said Dr. Perry, or I know Dr. Figley. Okay, he knows all of them. Okay, so I'm 80 years old, but I'd love to do it, and just send me some emails and follow up, and we'll set it up. Okay, so for the next month, I sent 10 emails or so, 10 phone calls or so, messages. I recorded some of them. No response. So finally I called during the day, and I talked to so what I'm getting to is why your brother didn't get the cure like a year ago, because I was trying to pull the whole family together. Okay. And so it's just not right. Okay. So, okay, let me keep going. All right. It's got to change. With your help, it can change now. Okay. I want to announce the cure and share it globally before Christmas. Okay. Could be done. So, just anybody who's available. We're going to have some healing events at the Palazzo d'Amore. We're going to be talking to some of the experts on healing, and we're going to work on healing each other, ourselves, and then sharing the secrets to healing globally. We're not going to videotape our personal meetings and sessions, but we'll find some format of videotaping, after, personal things. And anybody who decides to videotape will control all of their and own and decide and edit, help edit and everything. So, but the idea is to make it like urgent. So I didn't hear from him, from Shad. So I called during the day, and a man answered, and he turned out he was like the chief of staff or something like that for the company, a Vietnam veteran. And so I explained to him, well, first I said, I'm calling for Shad. And so he walked over, and I assume it sounded like he walked over and said, "Hey, Shad, are you available? It's Chris Bennett calling." And then he came back and he said, or he may have been carrying the phone. He said, "Shad's not available. He's on the phone." And so I said, "Well, could I just tell you, here's why I'm calling." And so I said, I explained to him that what I talked to Shad about him recently, and I wanted to have him on camera with the other people that created the concept of post-traumatic stress, talking about the cure for all kinds of health problems that are related. And so he said, "Oh, Shad can't do that. Shad's retired." I said, "Well, he's not retired. He's there now, and he's coming in every day for work." And no, he's tired. He's retired. He's old. Well, I said, still, it seems like he probably could go on camera with Dr. Figley and Dr. Perry, I may have said. And he said, "Oh, I know Dr. Figley." Yeah. And so I said, "Yeah, you could go on camera. They're going to talk about the cure for the veterans, because 22 are killing themselves every day." He said, "There's no cure for post-traumatic stress." I said, "Well, yes, there is. It's in the books. I have Dr. Figley's book here." Okay, I didn't show you. He signed it right here. Best wishes. Okay, that was like right after 9/11. I flew out there and had lunch with him and his second wife. This was published in 1998. Burnout in families. So when 9/11, for example. So 9/11. Let's see. Where's Soros's book? Okay. So you have to know what Soros knows. So, Taylor Swift's manager. Okay. That she escaped. All right. So bottom line is this, what I'm going to show you. We all have post-traumatic stress to a certain degree. So 95% of Americans get hypertension as they get older. According to the experts, like Dr. Figley and all his friends, hypertension is a symptom of post-traumatic stress. But there's an easy cure, okay? So some people, they don't want to hear this stuff for some reason. They just I never hear from them again, all right? So they just want to avoid it. So, but I'm getting to the cure, okay? I'm getting to the good news. So, if you hear bad news in what I'm telling you, there's the good news. So, the events around us are affecting us. So my dad wrote about it in his book. He wrote that, don't you know that when you hear about a bombing in the Middle East, or, gang violence, that your blood pressure goes up and, it causes you stress. And then he lists in his book all the different illnesses, that can result. So, anyway, George Soros wrote right in here. So this is the most important book on the planet. Okay, I got a list of actually a bunch of them. Published March 7th, 2002. So that was just 6 months later after 9/11. September 11 was a traumatic experience. The idea that terrorists are willing to kill a large number of innocent civilians and kill themselves in the process shocked all of us. The attack was incredibly audacious, and its effects surpassed even the perpetrator's expectations. Television brought the event into people's homes, and people were terrorized. The illusion that the United States is invulnerable was shattered. So, the cure is to recognize our stressors. Stressors, they're like sores, but they're invisible, except on the inside. Okay, so stressors. Well, the reaction is on the inside. The cause is usually external. And so we identify them, and then we change them, and then our stress goes down. Okay, so you can do, I know I'm going into the world around us, which is, we live in like a fish tank, and, the world around us is like fishes in a fish tank, all right? So, excuse me for laughing occasionally. I know this is a very serious subject and what you've all been through, okay? And I'm hoping you've lasted this long. So, but I feel like I need to go through the whole story because, okay, Tracy Reiner, and she was pulling it together with me, and then Gary Marshall died, and then 3 months later, Carrie Fisher died, and then the next day, her mom, Debbie Reynolds, died. Okay, in Carrie Fisher, they found cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy. Now, I find that odd that she would be doing cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy, hanging out with her assistant on Christmas Day, and then she gets on a plane, and then has a heart attack, supposedly. Okay. And then there's no, they found that in the autopsy, but then they didn't do a super deep investigation like they just did with, who was that guy? The guy from Friends who just died from ketamine. And Matthew Perry, was it? And then, uh-oh, I'm getting low on charge. Okay, I might have to take a little breaky poo. Okay, this is what it's like when you have a minor budget. Okay, and I'm running. All right, so that means I only have 5 more minutes before I got to plug in. Let me see. All right, I'm getting lost. All right, Matthew Perry. Okay. Okay, then it just totally derailed us. So I've got about 10 different connections to the Reiner family. I had about 10 different connections to Carrie Fisher's family that I was orchestrating together to, and Tracy said, my mom needs healing too, so she has post-traumatic stress, that's why she can't quit smoking. And even though she has cancer, and I said, well, I didn't know much about her, so I ordered her book, Penny's book, and it says my mother was nuts, and then it talks about her mother saying that she was ugly and stuff like that at a young age, and that was traumatic for her. So understandable. So side story, my dad's the founding medical director of the Pritikin Longevity Center, the longest profitable residential healthy living program in the world, now in a Trump hotel in Miami Beach. Oh, I already said that. Okay. So we were going to create a TV show